Welcome. Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. Welcome, everyone. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts.
Hi, and I'm Camille Barron, a financial coordinator and healthcare advisor, also in Sharon, Massachusetts. And Roberta, we're on a roll here. We've been having many of our returning guests, and this guest today is certainly one of our favorites. Would you like to introduce him, please?
I would love to. Look how handsome he looks today in
He
the
certainly
sapphire
does.
blue shirt. But
Yes.
anyway, this is Gary Bloom. Gary, I'll give you a little bit of background and then he can correct me. But he was an engineer for what, 20 years almost? And then he became a lawyer, which we were welcomed him. And then he went and got his master's degree in patent law, and he's a patent attorney. But now I'll let him tell you what his next step is. Gary, welcome, welcome, welcome. You can tell us a little bit about yourself or a lot about yourself. You've been on before. There's a lot to go over, so go for it.
Thank you. So you're correct. I was a software engineer for a long time, and I became an attorney. Then I became a patent attorney. I got a second law degree in intellectual property. It's called an LLM, a Master of Laws degree at BU. I feel naked not having the alma mater logo right here. My favorite fleece is from BU. But most recently, I've transitioned and I'm starting to do acting. And that's kind of what prompted me to want to hop on the show today to talk about labor law and unions and how that applies to acting. I thought it would be an interesting topic for the viewers.
Yeah, if you could
That's a great
speak up a little bit
combination.
more. Oh, I'm sorry,
It's a
Camille.
great combination because you have your law background and you're in acting. And yes, we can appreciate the fact that there's a lot of interaction, a lot of importance with regard to unions in the acting field. Why don't you tell us about that?
So in acting, the main union that governs acting is SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and it's a union. And so the rules about whether or not you have to join, your status, it's all actually regulated by federal law. So the National Labor Board legislates labor law federally. And then there was an interesting Supreme Court case which overrode that legislation. And so the way it affects labor unions in general is you don't necessarily have to join a labor union in some states. Some states you do, some states you don't. But in the states where you do, you're given certain protections beyond the state's protections through this federal Supreme Court case. And so in particular, like if someone says, oh, I want to get a job in this factory, do I have to join the union? The simple answer before this case was it would depend on the laws in your state. If you were in what they call a right to work state, then you could not be forced to join a union. And if you live in a union state, you could be forced to join a union. But now this legislation has changed, not just legislation, I'm sorry, the Supreme Court case has changed the labor law so that you cannot be forced to join a union and be like any other union member. You have this extra status where you can say, I don't want to be a member of this union. Maybe I don't believe in all the things that the union is lobbying for. So you have this extra status where you can say, I don't really want to be a member of this union, so I'm going to join the union and I'm going to resign my membership and I'm going to claim this alternate status. So it's called financial core, or FI-CORE for short, FI-CORE, financial core. And it's very prevalent. It's very prevalent in labor law and labor in labor unions across the country. But it's particularly interesting in the acting world because not a lot of actors know about it. And the way that things work in the Screen Actors Guild and SAG is, you have to qualify to join SAG. And if you do qualify to join SAG, that's great. But the golden rule of SAG, of the union, is you can't work in non-union events. And that can be very limiting, especially for somebody who's new to the industry. So that's where this financial core really kicks in, because if you want to join SAG, if you want to be a SAG member, and a lot of times you have to be a member of the union, a member of SAG, in order to work on a SAG production. And what that means is the production, the people who are making the project, the film, the commercial, the TV series, they've approached SAG and they say, you know, we want to be a SAG signatory. We want to be able to say that we are SAG compliant. We want to be able to hire SAG actors. We want to do all these things. So please let us register with you. Once they've done that, they have to follow the guidelines, the requirements of the SAG contract. And a lot of times the SAG contract will say, well, you have to have a certain number of this many union background people, you know, and if you don't, then you can, you know, you have to satisfy the requirements of the contract. And if you don't, you can either get in trouble or you can start to look outside the collection of people who are SAG members. But it's particularly interesting in the acting world.
Give some examples. Give some examples, like you want to, somebody's on a TV show here, and then they want to go further to New York or Hollywood. We're in Boston now. Do they have to be a member of SAG then? Are they looking to, I mean, we've all heard of Screen Actors Guild, but I think most of us think it's just for big movie sets.
So the way it works is, if the TV show is a SAG production, they're really not supposed to hire non-SAG actors, or I think producers and directors for that matter. But if they're a SAG production, if SAG has endorsed their production, they have to follow those rules and hire SAG actors. So if somebody wants to audition for a role, the director, the SAG director for the SAG project, might be in a quandary because, you know, he's supposed to only hire SAG actors to be in his project. And if the person applying isn't a SAG actor, well, the SAG director may be in a predicament, and, you know, it might affect the status of the production moving down the road. So if they want to distribute, you know, they have to have all the contracts in order. And it may well be that by having a non-SAG compliant actor, it might affect the contracts of that production.
How does the Supreme Court ruling fit in here?
So the way it fits in is that it's really not so much helping somebody get on the SAG set, because if you are a SAG actor, you can work any SAG production. The trick comes in that if as a SAG actor, you cannot work on a non-SAG production. Okay, they call it working. If you're a SAG actor, if you hold a SAG card and you work on a non-SAG project, they call it working off the card, right? It means you're working, not using your card, and you're not on a SAG production. So you can, as an actor, you can get in trouble for that, right? The union says, you know, you're only supposed to be doing SAG projects. That's golden rule. You're not supposed to work on non-SAG projects when you're a SAG member. If you want to be able to work on non-SAG projects, you can declare your financial core status. You can say to the union, you can say, dear Mr. SAG, you know, I appreciate being a SAG member, but I really want to be able to work on non-SAG productions and not have to worry about getting in trouble for it. So I'm going to resign my SAG membership and elect financial core status, FICOR status. And then I will still be able to work on SAG productions because I'll be what's called a fee-paying non-member of SAG, right? I can't say necessarily that I'm a SAG member anymore because I've resigned my membership. But according to the Supreme Court law, I can still work on a SAG set and represent myself as someone who's eligible to work on a SAG set. The difference is, once you've gone FICOR, you can still then work on a non-SAG set because you're not SAG and you're not bound by their rules and you're not bound by their golden rule. The golden rule number 1, which means you can't work on a non-SAG production. So if you're an actor,
are there any trade-offs? Are you compromising anything for yourself as an actor if you switch to FICOR rather than remaining an active member of SAG?
there are some concessions. For example, if you're not officially a SAG member, You can't hold SAG office. You can't vote in SAG elections. Things like this. You're still eligible for the SAG pension and SAG healthcare, but you're not privy to the internal operations of SAG because you're not officially a SAG member. You're essentially a non-member who's protected by SAG because you're paying money to them. So normally when you're a SAG member, you pay your dues, you pay an initiation fee, and it can be rather steep about how much you pay depending on where you are and where you want to work. And then you pay semi-annual dues. So if you elect this FICOR status, you're waiving your SAG membership. You're still protected by SAG, but you're no longer a SAG member. And SAG will say, you cannot claim to be a SAG member. You know, it's interesting. There are many casting sites. And when you register for the casting sites are places where you try to get acting gigs. There's usually a place that says, are you a SAG member? Are you not a SAG member? And they'll ask for your SAG ID. There's very few of those sites actually say, are you financial core? Are you FICOR? You know, it's taken the sites a long time to catch up with this financial core status. But I'm sorry, I'm not
Isn't
sure.
there also, Gary, isn't there also for TV, the AFTRA union? Some people belong to both.
So 10 years ago, SAG and AFTRA merged. So now it's not SAG and AFTRA, it's SAG-AFTRA. And it's interesting, again, that merger happened 10 years ago. And when you go to sign up for a lot of these casting sites, they still have them listed separately. Very few have them as SAG-AFTRA. But you're right. So when you belong to one, you theoretically belong to both, although theoretically now they're just one entity. Now, what's interesting is it doesn't affect theater. Theater is a different union. So SAG-AFTRA is now for film and TV actors predominantly, and maybe radio personalities. It covers some voiceover work as well.
Is that AFTA, AFTA?
AFTRA, American Federation of TV and Radio Actors.
How do you know about that, Camille?
I don't remember. I think sometime in my past when I was in the advertising business for a while before I got into insurance. I remember.
Interesting.
I think there were some people who were going to be in commercials. Some of the
Gary, is
people
that-
have been having a TV commercials.
Gary, is that common? Do like attorneys that come out into entertainment field or sports field, is that common that comes up, this AFTRA and Screen Actors Guild?
I don't know if it's common, but I think it's probably more likely that an attorney might be aware or interested in the aspects of labor law, because it's still labor law, right? It's whether or not you have to join a union and what is the status when you do join that union. So the thing is, so FICOR, like I said, it applies to unions all across the country. SAG is just one union in the US. So this financial core status applies to all unions across the country. In fact, the case that started this, I think, was National Labor Board versus General Automotive. It was it has an automotive industry case.
Oh yeah, National
Pull it up,
Labor
let's see.
Board.
National Labor Board versus General Motors. For those who are interested, the site is 373 US 734 from 1963.
You got that, Roberta?
Yeah, it's
Got that?
1963. So what that case, oh, that was first used in 1963. Well, what is it, becoming popular now?
Well,
years later?
It's still prevalent. Again, it applies to all unions across the country, but the number of FICOR actors, the number of actors who are starting to declare FICOR status is starting to increase a little bit, because I think part of it has to do with the pandemic, right? It's hard to work as an actor. It's hard. You're always looking for gigs. Unless you find some regular gig, you're always looking for new gigs. You're always looking for work. And when you can't do non-union work, it can be limiting, because although the pay for union work tends to be higher. I mean, first of all, look, SAG is great, right? It gives you certain protections. It gets you more money. It gets you more safety on set. It gets you sometimes residuals. You might appear in something and you're going to get residuals if you're a principal actor, you're somebody who speaks, right? So SAG protects you in many ways. But there are limitations to it as well, as we discussed, where you can't do this non-union work. And the majority of the work out there is non-union. I'd say right now, at least 2/3 of the gigs are
really?
non-union, non-SAG gigs, as far as acting, as far as film and TV go.
How much
So-
does it cost to join SAG? Is it the same every part of the country or different?
So that's a great question. And this is for all you future actors, current or future actors. This is complicated stuff. They don't explain it to you.
Maybe
gotta find
Camille
it
and
out on
I
the
will
fly.
go.
So there's all these different local unions, right? So we have a local union here in New York. There's a local union in, I'm sorry, my bad. I've been traveling a lot. I forget where I am. There's a local union here in New England. There's a local in New York. There's a local in LA. There's a local in Georgia. There's all these local unions. And it turns out that essentially across the country, there are at least 3 different price points, depending on which union you join. You join your local. Once you're eligible to join. If you join your local, there's a particular price tag with it. Once you join a local union, once you've joined the union, SAG, right, you're eligible to work at any other local union that doesn't have a higher initiation fee than your current one. So for example, like in New England, the initiation fee is $1,800, right?
Oh, boy.
Um,
Have to be serious.
Yep. So New England is $1,800. I don't remember what someplace like Georgia, Atlanta is another hotbed of film stuff. Atlanta's less. Maybe it's $800 to $1,200. I honestly don't remember. But if Atlanta was, say, $1,200 and New England is $1,800 and New York is $3,000,
Mm.
say I join New England, I pay my $1,800. I can still go to Atlanta and work because their price point, the initiation fee, is less than mine.
Mhm.
And the 2 big ones are, of course, New York and LA. Those are $3,000. So
Oh,
once you've paid the $3,000, then you can just work anywhere across the country.
Are you at liberty? I'd like to see, have you had any interesting things in the patent law before we finish with the entertainment?
So on the patent law side, I had been working on a special text editor for songwriters and poets. It's been my pet project for many years. And I did actually file a patent application for it. And I'm eagerly awaiting my first response for the Patent and Trademark Office to say whether or not they're going to grant all my claims or if they're going to be like,
What is it on? What is it on again?
It's my text editor for songwriters and poets that allows you to visualize the
Oh,
rhyming pattern and the rhythmic pattern of your written works.
boy, that's above my head too.
Anybody who writes poetry would get to reap the benefits of the software. And so the
Yeah.
software in itself works, but what I've done is I've extracted the invention, the inventive part, the inventive nuggets, and I've applied for a patent application on those inventive nuggets.
Brilliant.
Interesting.
Now,
I'm sorry, Roberta.
no, you go ahead.
Getting back to the membership, I understand you say there are benefits to being a SAG member, protections and so forth. But then you said that approximately 2/3 of the opportunities are non-SAG sets, right?
Yes.
So you must be a difficult choice because you want as many opportunities as you can get. And at the same time, if you're not in the SAG, you're not a SAG member or a FICOR member, then you're not getting those benefits. So you
That's
have to
true.
kind of weigh both, right?
Yeah, it can be tricky. The big question is often, when do I join SAG? First of all, you have to be eligible to join SAG. So I'm happy to chat about that for a moment too.
Yeah, chat about that. And if you don't mind, I'd like to explore your venture into it.
I just got back from a week in New York.
Yeah, there you go. That's fascinating. Go ahead.
Yes.
Talk about the qualifications and everything, and then your thing. That's exciting.
So let me make sure that I've mentioned all the legal stuff that I want to mention. So just regarding that Supreme Court case. So the Supreme Court, so first of all, in the US, the way our law system is set up, we have all our Our written laws, our statutes, our regulations, our rules that are implemented, issued, put out by the government entities. But in the US, we practice what's called common law, where case law can influence and trump written law. And so any holding by the United States Supreme Court is law, and it can override otherwise existing written law. And so that's what this National Labor Board versus General Motors case has done, right? So it's important to understand that anytime the Supreme Court issues a ruling, it's probably changing law. Someone has appealed something because they didn't like the way the law was written. So we have to understand that unions in general have what they call collective bargaining power, right? They're working to protect their employees, their workers, by giving them safer working conditions, better pay, so they're working hard to protect their employees, their workers. And the whole idea of this financial core is you become what's called a fee-paying non-member, right? You're paying your fees, not so much, unions typically collect dues, but afterwards you're paying your fees, right? Because they're trying to separate you from being a regular union member. And in particular, SAG, make sure that they tell you can't claim to be a SAG member anymore, so that they don't want to lose people, right? But even if you go financial core, you're still paying dues. You still have to pay the initiation fee, and you still have to pay your semi-annual dues. You might get a slight reduction because when you're financial core, you don't necessarily have to pay for all of the union's costs. You can say, they're lobbying for things I don't believe in. You have to pay for their collective bargaining power, for them trying to get you better conditions, better safety, higher pay. You have to pay for that. And that's, 98% of their cost. But sometimes they lobby for things you don't believe in. So when you go FICOR, you don't have to pay that couple of percent extra. So that's that aspect. The other thing to mention is there are what they call right to work states where you cannot be forced to join a union. And there are union states where you can. So in New England, all of New England is a union, we're all union states. You can be forced to join a union in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. All right. You can also be forced to join a union in California and New York. And
How about
Illinois.
Arizona and Wisconsin? We have people that watch from there.
I'd have to look it up. I just don't, I wrote down
okay.
some of the more interesting states for me. And then right to work states. So, and California, New York, right? So if you're acting, the big hotbeds for acting are LA, that's the biggest. LA is really big for films. New York's really big for series, TV series, but they both do both, of course. But then Chicago is big, so Illinois, and Atlanta is big in Georgia. So all of those hotbeds for acting, except for Georgia, except for Atlanta, everything is a union state. So you can be forced to join the union. How do you join the union? When you work, the way you join a union, you have two different ways to join a union. You can either get a speaking role, or you can get 3 vouchers. You get a voucher when the union, when you're on a SAG production and the SAG can't find enough people to do background work. So let me take a step back. There's 2 types of roles. For the most part, I'm simplifying this. There's 2 types of roles when you're on screen. You're either a principal actor, which means you get to talk, or you're a background actor, which means you don't, right? So if you think about it, it's kind of interesting. You're watching somebody on TV and one character is talking to another, and the other character, you haven't seen that other character before, and the other character doesn't say anything in response. They just nod their head or shake their head, then walk away. That's a background actor, right? They didn't speak. So you either are a principal, which means you have a speaking role, or your background, which means you don't. That's an oversimplification, but let's just go with that. Typically what will happen on a SAG production, part of the SAG agreement is that they'll have a certain number of SAG background actors. Say they need 40, but they're trying to get people and they can only find 30 SAG actors. By the contract, they're allowed, they need 40 people, but they can only find 30 that are SAG. They're allowed to bring 10 non-SAG actors onto set to work as background. And those 10 non-actors can get SAG vouchers. That means they get treated like SAG, even though they're not SAG. And the production could do that because that's the part of the terms of the contract.
Boy.
you appear 3 times. If you get 3 of those vouchers, you become SAG eligible. It means you can say to SAG, I want to join. I want to give you guys a big chunk of money and join. And they'll say, okay. You don't have to join after 3 vouchers, but you can join. You're what they call SAG eligible. Gets a little different after the 4th voucher. After the 4th time you do this, now you've got your 4th voucher. Now you're what's called a must join. You've been on a SAG set 4 times. You can't, once you're on that 4th time, you get that 4th voucher, it starts a 30-day period. You can work for those 30 days, but after those 30 days, you can work for 30 days on that SAG, on a SAG production. After those 30 days, you must join SAG if you want to continue to work on SAG projects. You can work on non-SAG projects because you're not SAG yet, right? You're just SAG eligible. And you're maybe a must join, which means you're at that point where you have to pay if you want to continue to work on SAG projects. So the other way you can get into SAG is if you are, say, on set as a background, right? Because you have to be vouchered as a background person, non-SAG, to be on set. Maybe in that 1st, 2nd, or 3rd appearance before you have to join, somebody says, hey, Camille, I like your look. You're here for background, but I like your look. I'm going to give you, I want you to say this line, these 2 words, because it's going to make the scene better. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting a speaking role. So you've been bumped. You've been bumped up. You're no longer a background. Now you're a principal. They've given you a speaking role. Now you're really an actor. As soon as you speak on film in a SAG production, you're a SAG must join. So that's like the 2 ways. You have to be.
So we don't have much time left. Tell us what you've been doing as a
Okay.
SAG or non-SAG, or just
Okay.
tell us.
All right. So I have done so far 5 or 6 background gigs. I started on Don't Look Up. I did a
That was
HBO.
great. I love that. And Don't Look Up.
It won awards. It's a, unfortunately, the day I was there, I didn't see any of the principals. But that's kind of the cool thing sometimes about background work. Sometimes you're on set with principals and sometimes you're not. I was on set last week on 2 different productions in New York, and I was 4 feet away from one of the principal actors, a very famous man. I'm not supposed to say what productions they were because they're still shooting, but I was 4 feet away holding a boom mic so that he could be interviewed by reporters. And it was, I'm like, sir, just so you know, I'm sorry to impose your personal space. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's cool. But it was cool to get to chat with him.
Yeah.
So, but I've been on Don't Look Up. I've been on Julia, which is a remake of the Julia Child series with Sarah Lancashire. Basically anything that's on IMDb, I can talk about. So that's on IMDb. I just spent 16 days on the Boston Strangler, which is going to be coming out with Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon. Again, this is all public knowledge because it's all on IMDb.
Yeah.
I got to be F. Lee Bailey's aide. I was in a scene. Well, I probably shouldn't say that part, but I was, in a scene with very close with a very distinguished actor. And then my pride and joy is there's a scene on Boston Strangler where I am, again, 3 or 4 feet away from this very, very renowned actor, super renowned. So he's prolific. And we were doing what's called a walla scene. So there's an exception to what I said about speaking on camera. So normally if you speak on camera and you're the only person speaking, it's a speaking role. But there are times where you can speak and it doesn't count as a speaking role because you're in a group. So if they have 10 people singing, that doesn't count as a speaking role. If you have one person singing by himself, it is singing, right? If you have 15 reporters asking somebody a question all at the same time, the reporters won't necessarily be considered to have speaking roles. But one reporter asking a question would be a speaking role. So there's this little thing called a walla, W-A-L-L-A. So I had a walla scene with this renowned, prolific actor, and we were supposed to ask questions. I asked this question. I was the first person to shoot the question out. And there was a principal actor there who also asked a question. And the renowned actor looked me in the eye and answered my question. And it was just amazing. I felt like a real actor.
Yeah. Terrific.
I've been in multiple background projects. I've had one speaking role, which hopefully will be getting released in the next couple of months. Should be a
Fantastic.
SAG production, which is very exciting.
Fascinating. And with that, we have to wind up, but it's a good reason to pick up when we come back and find out how you'll be the renowned actor.
Yes,
The law
exactly.
degree. Go ahead.
I tell you, Gary, you always have a surprise for us whenever.
I
we-
try. I try. Camille.
Okay, Camille's gonna wind up because I think we got
Yes,
10
It's
seconds.
been great. This is wonderful news and happy for you too, Gary. And thank you viewers for watching. If you have
Yes.
any other questions, we'll be happy to get them to Gary. Just send us an email. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gary, for being here. And please let us hear from you because remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and
And
you.
you. Thank you all.